Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide, and welcome back to yet another beginner series. And joining me tonight are two repeat guests. We've got both Trevor and Chris tonight, and the three of us are joining forces to talk about Metroid. Now, just like with the last series that we talked about with Tekken, this is one where, again, I truly am just completely in the dark. I know, of course, of Metroid. I know of Samus thanks to Smash, but I've never truly from start to finish played a Metroid game. I have Prime remastered on my Switch, and I tried it out once. I don't remember why I put it down, but I have yet to pick it up. But hopefully tonight inspires me to pick it back up. So let's real quick say hello to the chat. We had two messages from the Nerdporial Lifeform, one of my mods, who says, I'd love to be here, but I will be doing Chillporial. Prime Remastered is so awesome. I may come by if you're still on after an hour. Absolutely. So
for sure. Yeah, go for it.
So let's get into this. I've already told you guys how I first heard about Metroid. Let's hear it from you and Trevor. Why don't you kick us off? How did you first hear about Metroid?
Smash Bros. Actually. So growing up, my gaming was pretty limited to like Mario, Zelda, Splatoon when the Wii U was a huge deal. Which by the way, they killed off its online yesterday, but that's beside the point.
Rest in peace.
And I played a series of other things, but Metroid was something I had actually never heard of until I got Smash 4 on the Wii U. I saw Samus, and I'm like, huh, he looks interesting. Then come to find out, he is actually a she, and from a franchise I had never even heard of. So then I got the Metroid Prime trilogy and tried playing that, and I beat Metroid Prime 1. I have it on the Prime Remaster on my Switch, just haven't done a whole lot with it. And from there, I started playing more of the games. I played a good chunk of Prime 2. I've played and beaten Fusion. I've played and beaten Dread. Played a good chunk of Super Metroid. Played some of the original. Played some of Metroid, the one on the 3DS, Return of Samus, or Samus Returns. And
Samus Returns.
Yeah, no, I have almost every Metroid game in some way, shape, or form. I just haven't beaten all of them, but I've at least dabbled in most.
Okay, fair enough. And Chris, what about you?
Yeah, so my original introduction to Samus was similar to Trevor's, although for me it was through Super Smash Brothers Melee, because that was like my first Smash game, and then since that, so Melee was of course on GameCube, and also on GameCube was the first Metroid Prime game, because that was the first time I actually played a game in that series. So I played most of the original version of Metroid Prime. I played some of Prime 2 and Prime 3. I've also played Fusion on the Game Boy, Prime Hunters on the DS, and some of Dread. Oh, and Other M on the Wii.
Okay. So of course you guys, like I said, know way more about this than me, and that is again the point of beginner series is we're breaking down these different series, these different franchises for someone that has never heard of it before, and of course for all intents and purposes that is me tonight. So a lot of the questions, as always, that I'll be asking are questions that someone who has never heard of Metroid before will, of course, be asking. So, as always, let's start with the out-of-universe stuff. And how did Nintendo come up with the idea for Metroid?
Well, that question...
All right, so
May I say this real quick, Chris?
Sorry.
That question depends on which Metroid you're asking. Are you asking your typical 2D side-scroller Metroid, or are you asking Prime?
The very first one.
All right, Chris, I'll let you handle this one first.
Okay, so Paul, you're probably familiar with the sci-fi movie franchise Aliens versus Predator.
Yes.
Yeah, so the original Aliens movie slash trilogy, like those were the direct inspiration for Metroid for in several respects. One first being female protagonist for both. Ellen Ripley inspired Samus. Both were tasked by a organization who gave them orders to exterminate a predatory alien species, the xenomorphs and Metroids, respectively.
Okay.
And even even the design of Ridley's body was loosely inspired by the xenomorphs, although of course the xenomorphs don't have wings.
Right.
I
Okay.
actually, I actually did not know that movie served as the inspiration.
Truthfully, neither did I. I always was expecting, I guess, maybe just because of how big of it was, I expected there was a little bit of a Star Wars inspiration to Metroid. Is there any little bit of that in there?
I mean, she is a
Not
bounty
that I
hunter.
can really point to. Yeah, and those are fairly common in Star Wars.
Yeah. So, who at Nintendo specifically was the one to come up with it? Was it Shigeru Miyamoto or
No,
was it someone else?
I don't,
It was someone else.
I don't know who it
It
was, but I
wasn't
know
it
it
wasn't
wasn't.
Sakurai, was it?
No, because
Sak-
He's
it
Kirby,
was
Smash, and Kid
Metroid
Icarus.
was
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, the designers for Metroid are Yoshio Sakamoto, Gunpei Yokoi, and Hiroyuki Kimura.
Okay.
Those are probably not names that either of you really know,
No,
but
because
those
No,
are
unfortunately.
but Sakamoto is the primary guy.
Okay.
Yeah. See, Shigeru Miyamoto, he is most known for Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, and I think Pikmin
And Star Fox.
and Star Fox.
Yep.
But yeah,
You need to bring back Star Fox,
Metroid
Nintendo.
was a whole nother person. What did you just say?
Nintendo, please bring back Star Fox.
And F-Zero and Kid Icarus while you're
Paul
at it.
wants Nintendo to bring back Star Fox. That's what he said.
I
Yeah.
heard it the second time. That's why I added what I
That is a
did.
beginner series in its own right. I could probably tackle that one. I could almost tackle that one solo because I have a lot of. Okay, I haven't played every single Star Fox game, but I've played the important ones, and I could almost tackle that one solo. We'll talk about that though later. But anyways, getting back to Metroid. So, how many games total are there in the Metroid
Ooh,
series? And kind of tied to that, is it all just one story, or is it where they're all more or less like each game is its own standalone story or series of stories?
they go in a timeline, and
Each game is yeah.
I'm trying to remember right off the top of my head how many Metroid games there are.
Here, let's do a quick Google search.
Let's see.
I've got it. There's a total of 11 games.
Okay. And are they all, and you said, Trevor, they all fall in under the same timeline. So they all
Yes.
basically more or less, continue the same story?
In a rough manner, yes. It does
Okay.
kind of branch off and do its own thing in some ways because the Metroid Prime series takes place between the original game and the second one. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. And then it just
No,
goes from there.
you're correct on that. The Prime trilogy, yeah, the the Prime trilogy plus the two extra Prime games all take place between Metroid 1 and 2.
And real quick, I got to jump in here. Phil just popped into the chat. He says, here's what I got to say. No Paul, no Paul, no Paul. And by the way, no Paul. Well, you know, Phil, what I say to that, I say this. And real quick, he has a hatred for Patrick Stewart. That's why this is so funny. Oh, and I forgot I had this picture.
Ew.
So, anyways, so when did the first game come out? And what system did it come on?
I want to say I know it was on the NES, and I think it was
The original
1987.
game.
I want to say it was in 1987.
1987 in the US, 1986 in Japan.
Okay. That sounds about right. That sounds like it would have been, because let me real quick Google something real quick. Okay, so the Aliens movie, the second one, not Alien, Aliens came out in 1986. So it tracks that the first Metroid game would come out around that same time. Let me real quick just double check. The first Alien movie came out in 79. So first one came out in 79, second one came out in 86. So it makes sense then that at least in America, Metroid would release in 87. And the
Yes.
most recent one that came out that isn't a remaster, that doesn't count. The most recent one that came out was Dread, and that came out in 2021. Is that correct?
Yes. Correct.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's all of the out of universe stuff that I can think of. So let's now go into the universe. So, what is the overall story of Metroid?
I'm staying
Right,
silent
so
because I
do you
didn't
want to
know
start
if.
with talking about Samus herself?
Yeah. Okay.
I,
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that. So let's talk about Samus herself, which, by the way, here is Samus right here. That is, by the way, what she looks like in her armor. Give me 1 second, real quick, because we have to show what she looks like outside of her armor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll get that later. So, who is Samus, and why does she do what she does?
All right, so Samus was born on the planet K2L, which was a colony controlled by Earth. When she was 3 years old, the space pirates, who were being led by Ridley at the time, visited the planet looking to refuel their ship. And Samus, at that young age, like she saw Ridley and initially tried to befriend him. And Ridley, being the sadistic bastard that he is, didn't particularly take a liking to that. So he ordered the pirates to basically wreck everything on the planet. Samus's mother tried to get her out of the way when Ridley attempted to
And real
attack
quick,
Samus.
for clarification, I know because of the timing, what I'm showing right now is not Samus's mother. This is Samus herself without her armor. Zero Suit Samus, as she's called in Smash.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anyway, Samus's mother stepped in the way of Ridley's fire blast and got killed protecting Samus. Samus's father, in response, destroyed a fuel tank to blow up the space pirate ship, but that ultimately cost him his life in the process. Ridley, of course, survived that and then ordered the rest of the population of K2L, save for Samus herself, to be wiped out before him and the pirates ultimately left. After
and
becoming the sole survivor of her planet, Samus was discovered and adopted by the Chozo, a
Mm-hmm.
bird-like species who are pretty much the most advanced race in the Metroid universe.
Okay.
yeah, little did
So,
Ridley know, in wrecking the colony, he created his worst enemy.
yeah, I can imagine. So, real quick, you brought up Ridley, so I'll go ahead and bring his picture up. What 3-year-old's gonna want to befriend that?
You'd be surprised.
Okay. So, what exactly is Ridley here? He looks like I definitely see the xenomorph influence here, but he also looks a heck of a lot like a pterodactyl. So, what is he?
So his species is not
The
really
only
known.
like the only like well, the only name given to him is Space Dragon. That's
Mhm.
literally it. And we don't know much about like that species beyond well, Ridley himself.
Like we don't even know where he comes from.
Correct.
Okay.
But he is like one of the leaders of the space pirates who basically want to take over the galaxy slash universe, and it's highly implied that the only reason Ridley even works with them is because it just gives him an excuse to, well, kill people, because like that's what he loves above all else, because like I said, he's a sadistic bastard.
Okay. And Trevor is presenting his amiibo right there.
Yes, sir. I actually have
Okay.
Samus right here too. Okay. I'm
I
gonna
used to
have
have
to
an
move
amiibo of the
him
Zero
here.
Suit Samus one, but Jonathan has all my amiibo now. So basically these two are like the main rivalry of the whole series, correct?
Pretty
Yes,
much.
Ridley, you'll fight him in the vast majority of Metroid games.
I
Okay.
think he, I think he's been in
Like he's usually
over.
like yeah, he's usually
Go ahead, Go
Go,
ahead, Chris.
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
you first, Trevor.
I was just gonna say, I think he's been in more than half of them.
Okay. Yeah, correct. Yeah, there's Ridley's been in like most of them. He's usually not the final boss. Like the only time he ever played the final boss role was in Samus Returns, but most games he's usually like the second to last or third to last boss that you'll fight.
Okay.
And and sometimes when he appears, it's not even the real him. Metroid Fusion.
What?
Oh yeah, did I mention that he can cheat death? He's found ways to do it over and over again.
Interesting.
Oh yeah.
So you could almost say it's like he's like Springtrap. He always comes back.
Yep,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yep,
Shout out to Jeff.
still alive
So,
magically.
yes. So in all of that, where do these guys come in? The Metroids themselves.
Well, before we get to that, we'd have to talk about the Chozo briefly because
Okay.
I alluded to earlier.
That's this guy.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah, they are, like I said before, they're the most technologically advanced race in the Metroid universe. They've got they've pretty much blurred the line between science and spiritualism in a way,
He
because of
looks like
how
a
advanced
character
they
that you
are.
would see in Warhammer 40K almost.
Yeah, and so the Chozo raised Samus after her parents died, and they're the ones who trained her to fight and gave her her iconic armor.
Mm-hmm.
And
And let's real quick talk about that armor for a second. So what does that armor do for Samus?
along with protecting her from the elements, it gives her her iconic arm cannon, which can shoot all different kinds of beams and missiles, and is able to integrate the other Chozo tech as well as technology from other species into its repertoire.
It can also
She's also
protect
got
her
other
from
ways to get
extreme
around, like she
heat.
can jump really far, grapple. Yep.
And
It
somehow turn her into a ball.
Yeah,
yep, somehow.
the morph ball.
And it protects her from extreme heat, and it can be upgraded in various ways. I don't know if we're going to talk abilities in a later segment, but some of the abilities are better mobility and sight underwater. Um, for story reasons, she needs ice protection as well, in some games at least. And in Metroid Dread, you can even walk in lava at max upgrades.
Okay.
Yeah, the
We're
suit
not
can pretty much function in like any environment, whether it's in lava, underwater, outer space. you name it, the
Harm,
suit can
har,
adapt.
harmful darkness.
Okay. So, real quick, by the way, I'm pulling in a couple other pictures, not of characters, but of locations. Granted, it's going to be their Smash Brothers equivalent, but I still want to ask about them because this is like the most I know of them. So, getting back to the Chozo, why do they give her the suit?
Yeah, they gave Samus the suit because they believe she's like chosen to like protect they trusted her to basically protect the universe from threats and evil such as the space pirate, um, things like that, and they gave and aside from the suit, they also updated Samus's biology to make her basically superhuman.
So like Captain America almost.
Yeah, but I would say she's probably stronger because when she was raised by the Chozo, they took her to planet Zebes, which has 960 times the gravity of Earth. So if she were to come here, she'd be the strongest person on the planet, pretty much.
By a very long shot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So she sets out. So again, that brings up my other question: where do these guys come in?
So, mind if I take this one,
So the
Chris?
Metroids are the threat that you fight. Sure.
Alright, so the Metroids are a threat that you can fight, but there were these little things going around called the X-Parasite, and the Chozo actually created the Metroids as a way to destroy the X-Parasite, as Metroids would naturally prey on them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it worked, but got out of hand in the process. And then Metroids became a huge problem across the galaxy because the Chozo overdid it a bit.
Okay.
Chris, did I get that or did I miss something?
Yeah, you got the gist of it. Yeah, one thing you could definitely say is that for all the Chozo's achievements in science, you can also argue that like most of the disasters in the series are indirectly their fault because of how absurdly powerful their scientific creations ultimately get.
Yeah, basically they are in the embodiment of the phrase "I have an idea so crazy it might just work."
So almost you could say, to quote Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, you were so wrapped up with thinking about how you could do it that you never stopped to think whether or not you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yep,
paraphrasing almost.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. So how does it all come together? So the Metroids, Ridley, the Chozo, how does it all tie together?
Do you want to take that one, Trevor, or should I?
You can go ahead and take that one.
Okay. Yeah, so like Trevor said, the Chozo created the Metroids to fight off a deadly viral threat called the X parasites, and of course they succeeded and then went rogue beyond the Chozo's control. Um, After that, I don't want to spoil like end up too much of the lore and such, but eventually the Ridley and the space pirates learned of the Metroids and, of course, sought to weaponize them because of the whole take over the universe thing. And they've tried several times to do this, and even though to varying degrees of success, they could hardly really get the Metroids under their control because they really do not like taking orders from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the space pirates, like when it comes to science, they're tossing morality out the window, like because they'll do like they'll push any scientific boundary they can as long as it results in them achieving galactic domination.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, that's very accurate.
And I take it just like Ridley, the space pirates are a threat that Samus never truly squashes, right?
Right. You
because
fight them in so many of the games. Like, granted, they're not the only villains, but
somehow Palpatine returned.
Ain't that the truth? I need to get a clip of that.
We have zero. Also, we have Zero Suit Samus here on my screen.
Nice.
I'm trying to show off these characters as we talk about them. I only have like two
Nice.
others though. Three others, sorry.
I understand. All right, so let's pivot for a second out of the story and talk gameplay for a second. And there's this term that I've heard get thrown around a bunch, and that's the term Metroidvania. And I know what two games they're talking about. They're talking about Metroid and they're talking about Castlevania. So, what exactly is the Metroid part of a
Pick me.
Metroidvania? Go ahead,
Pick me. Pick
Trev.
me.
Go ahead, Trev.
Okay, so Metroidvanias are a game that is
Good.
classified as basically it's it's not always this, but typically it is a side-scrolling game where you're constantly going to one place, getting an upgrade, and then backtracking to a place you couldn't access before because you have the upgrade for it now. And then you rinse and repeat that whole process till you've got the whole map and beaten all the bosses and stuff like that. And the
Okay.
reason that genre is called Metroidvania is because Metroid and Castlevania both started that. And they were
Okay.
struggling to come up with a name for the genre because it was becoming more popular. So they were like, you know what? Heck with it. We'll just call it Metroidvania. And that's why, how that came to be.
Okay.
Now, there's more
And
to it. Oh, sorry.
sorry. Now let me ask you this. Between Metroid and Castlevania, what does specifically Metroid bring to the table with that?
The thing is, I'm not sure because both Metroid and Castlevania function very similarly. Both are exploration based. Both are about collecting upgrades and then going back to places with those upgrades so you can access
Mm-hmm.
them. It's not necessarily either one had a huge influence by itself. It's that both of them started the genre of exploration, then going back to other places with new gear.
Okay.
Um, and the Metroidvania genre is more than as I've described it. It's heavily exploration based, and yes, once you have new abilities or weapons, you can then go to a new area, but there is more to it than that. Bear in mind, this is a beginner series. I'm not trying to go super in depth.
Of course.
So that's the best I can answer that, unless Chris has something to add to that.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, you summed it up nicely there. Because with the whole exploration thing and the need to like return to like old areas you've already been to with new upgrades to get to places you couldn't before, like that happens in pretty much every game.
And it should be noted, not every Castlevania game is like that, though. There are some games like the original where it's level based, but the majority of the Castlevania games are Metroidvanias.
Okay.
The Castlevania is a whole other can of worms for another day.
Right. And just purely on personal opinion, which of the two do you think does it better?
Ooh. That's a very good question because I love both franchises with all my heart. But my bias, like I've talked to many people, Ella included, about I've got a holy quadrinity of video game franchises, those being Persona,
Mm-hmm.
Castlevania, Zelda, and Fire Emblem. I'm gonna have to go with Castlevania because I like it better than Metroid.
Okay, fair enough. Chris, same question.
Oh well, I mean, I can't really answer as far as the Castlevania side goes because I've never played those. But I mean, it would be a cop out for me to say for me to just give the biased answer of Metroid. But I can So I'm just gonna say, like, I'd say they both do a good job of essentially defining the genre that they would cultivate.
Now, for the viewers out there are a ton of game franchises that I love. It's just those four stand above the rest. I love Metroid and plenty others. I just want to get that out of the way.
Okay. So let's pivot back into the universe for a second and talk about some locations. So again, I've pulled some pictures I'm going to show. These are the Smash stage variants of these locations, but I pulled these specifically because it's how I know them. So, of course, the classic one here. Tell me about Brinstar.
All right, so Brinstar is one of the locations on planet Zebes where Samus grew up and later returned to when the space twice actually when the space pirates took it over.
Mm-hmm. And then, what is this like brain thing that's kind of up in the background toward the top of the picture?
That would be Mother
That
Brain.
is something that Smash just kind of inserted into the background there. That's not Mother Brain.
Oh, I thought
Okay.
it was. I thought it was. My bad.
Yeah. So I'm sure Smash took some creative liberties with these maps in order to make them a playable thing. Like, for example, Trevor, Mementos doesn't look like that, how it looks in the Smash stage. They kind of just took artistic license with that,
I,
right?
they did what they could, and I think it's fine for what it is.
Right. So the next one, tell me about Norfair.
Okay,
Chris,
Norfair is another location on Zebes, and in both the original Metroid game and Super Metroid, it's where Samus fought Ridley.
Okay. Also, hot take, this particular map is, in my opinion, an underrated map in all of Smash.
agreed. Preach it louder.
Yeah, that is a great map, especially with the fire that comes up from different locations. It's amazing. And then the last one to talk about is Frigate Orpheon. And the
May I
big
take this one?
question I have here, go ahead.
You said you had a big question, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
the
Sure.
big question is who is that in the containment field?
So that is the Queen Parasite. Frigate Orpheon is actually the very first location in the first Metroid Prime game, and this room symbolizes the boss fight in that area because you fight the Queen Parasite as like the first major boss of the game. It's this like space station thing that you go to at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it explodes, as most places tend to do after Samus has done her work there, uh, you escape it within a time limit and then bolt away to the planet Talon 4. So that's basically just the beginning part of Metroid Prime, the original.
Okay, fair enough. So, looking now at all of the games, so there's let's talk specifically about the Prime series. So, the Prime series, if I'm not mistaken, is the first arguably non-Metroidvania Metroid game because that's when they turned it into a first-person shooter. And I think you told me once, Trevor, that they did that because they wanted to compete with Halo. Is that correct?
Yeah, so back when the console wars were going strong, Xbox had Halo. What was the first person shooter that PlayStation had back then?
Call of
I'll be
Duty,
back.
All right. What the
I think.
what first person shooter did they have again?
I think Call of Duty, but I'm not 100% sure.
We'll go with Call of Duty. So, with the first person shooter genre becoming popular, they wanted one of their own. So they figured instead of it being like an online campaign or instead of it being whatever Halo did, I've never played Halo, they wanted it to be a story driven 3D Metroidvania. And they figured the best franchise they had to do that with was Metroid. Because,
Okay.
the only character they made that had a gun, or at least an equivalent to it.
Until Splatoon
So,
came about.
yeah, pretty much. And let me I'm not trying to be rude, but let me partially correct what you said. The Metroid Prime games are still very much Metroidvania. It's just they're a 3D take now.
Okay. So let's pause on that for a second. And Chris, you came in at the right time because we're about to have a bit of a debate. 2D Metroidvania versus 3D Metroidvania. What's the pros and cons of both?
I mean, I don't know if I'm really the one to answer that question because I've played games of both kinds, like the Prime for the 3D and for the 2D types. I played Fusion, some of Dread, Other M kind of bounced between both, depending on what you were doing. Um, so, I'm not
I,
really sure I would have enough of a good answer to really weigh the pros and cons for that.
I'm
Okay.
gonna. The thing is, I don't really have a preference because I've played 2D and 3D Metroidvanias, and I love both. I will say 3D Metroidvanias are a little more challenging when it comes to traversal. Because if you don't have, like, okay, let's say you're trying to get to where your map is telling you to go, and the only route you see isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do your best to find that hidden opening to get into a next area or like an alternate path, and it's not always obvious what to do. In some ways, you could say 3D Metroidvania feels like puzzle solving, kind of like Zelda.
Okay. So if you had a preference between the two, Trevor, what would you say it would be?
I'd probably say 2D Metroidvanias just because I've played more 2D ones. Like one of my favorite video games of all time, Hollow Knight, is a 2D Metroidvania and a damn good one at that.
Okay.
So I love both, but my preference is 2D.
All right, fair enough. And Chris, if you had a preference.
I would have to go with the 3D because like that's the type of Metroid game I started with. Because like I said, the first one I played was Prime One as a kid. So and so I'm kind of like more used to that because I've played the main Prime trilogy and Hunters, um, and Other M as well kind of fell into that too. Even if that one was third person for most of it.
Okay. And again, I have not really played these games at all, so I don't have a preference yet. Although I can tell you guys, I will definitely, when it comes time for me to play through Prime, I will probably stream that one.
And if you ever
So,
need and if you need help knowing what to do, feel free to ask me, but just know if you're asking for help on something obvious, I'll be doing this to you the whole time.
yes, and what he's doing, guys, that's a in joke between the two of us.
Yes.
Just just
Originated at
like
work.
just like Scooby Doo.
Move on, please.
Ruh-roh.
Okay. Yes.
I
Okay,
don't
so
I don't get paid enough for this.
I'm not paying you at all.
Exactly my
Big
point.
things I shouldn't say on stream.
Anyway, continue.
Okay. So let's go back in time though. When Prime came out and when Virginia says rut-row raggy.
Mm,
Virginia, thank you for that.
I don't know what I hate more, Scooby Doo or the Whoopers.
Oh, that reminds me. That
No,
reminds me. I gotta do it. I gotta do it.
me and my me and my big mouth.
Okay.
Okay, move on, please.
All right, back on topic. Okay.
Sorry.
Let's go back in time though to when Metroid Prime first released, and they made that switch from 3D to 2D. How well initially did the fan base take that?
Honestly, I believe they took it very well. Uh, because okay, there's a lot of debate on if the Metroid Prime franchise, like, some people consider Metroid Prime to be a different franchise from Metroid, and I personally do not.
Mhm.
I I consider the Metroid Prime games to be real Metroid games. I think they're just a different take in a different format, which adds more world depth, more story, and it gives you more freedom. Some people don't like that, but personally, I love it.
Yeah,
Right.
like yeah. Trying to dismiss them as non-canon is
Also,
kind of pathetic.
at Virginia's request.
Well, there you go. Trevor acting dramatic. All right. So let's ask this question now. Is there what are so some time ago, I think this was an issue in a Game Informer I was reading way back in the day when I was still in high school. Apparently there was this one game called Other M that people for whatever reason weren't liking. What's the
Because
deal with that?
Oh,
because it shows that. Okay, you go ahead, Chris.
wait, no, you go because were you about to say because it shows that Samus is human and has emotions?
Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
What's wrong with that?
Well, okay, so just for context, there's a moment in the story where Samus gets like PTSD freak out when encountering the slight spoilers, the Ridley clone aboard the bottle ship, and because it was meant to be a reference to the Metroid manga where it shows like a flashback to when Samus was 14 and Ridley attacked the Chozo homeworld at that time, and Samus had a similar reaction back then to seeing him, which makes sense because like I said before, Ridley's the monster that killed her family and the rest of her planet. Like, and because and due to a combination of fans not knowing that that it's a reference to the manga, and of course not considering, or I don't know how many of them even know Samus's backstory before playing the game, they acted like it was out of character for Samus to react like that to Ridley when she's beaten because she's beaten him many times in battle, which I call BS on that because Samus has that fear of Ridley in her. And there's even a moment in Metroid Prime 3 in the first boss fight with him that best shows this right before he tackles her down the generator shaft. Like she's just she's just blindly firing at him, even though it's not hurting him, but you can kind of see a bit of fear in her eyes. So Prime 3 shows that as well. But because of the way Other M executed it, too many people have this idea that Samus is like some kind of emotionless robot and that she should be one just because she shouldn't fear Ridley because of how many victories she's had over him. But that fear is always going to be there, even if Samus doesn't always show it.
Well, another thing too, like everyone has this image in their mind that Samus is this like super overpowered badass who's faced by nothing. And yeah, she's a badass, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But even badasses, I can't talk today. Even badasses have things that they're afraid of.
Yeah. I mean, look at one of the best scenes from The Lion King where Simba is getting, the talk to from Mufasa about going into the elephant graveyard, and Simba says something to the effect of, "But you're brave, Dad. You're not afraid of anything." And he says, "I was today. I was afraid of losing you."
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and
and
Samus's like reaction with
go ahead, Chris.
what'd you say, Trevor? I couldn't hear you.
You go ahead. It's fine. I can say
Yeah,
what
and
I'll say
Samus's
afterwards.
reaction to okay, yeah, Samus's reaction to losing the baby Metroid that imprinted itself on her at the end of Metroid 2 / Samus Returns. Like that was a genuine emotional reaction, like because she came to care for the little guy,
Yeah.
and it sacrificed itself to protect her at the end of Super Metroid.
Wow.
And I was gonna say, I'm going somewhere with this. I promise. In the movie The Good Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus Rex dude says something to the effect of, "You can't get rid of your fear, but you can learn how to deal with it," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Damn good movie, by the way. I need to watch it again.
Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like basically just people misunderstanding the game. Because
Yes.
absolutely, people that are brave and strong can have emotions and can have fear because we're human, we're not robots. Even superhumans are still human. There
I
was
mean,
only one emotionless action hero, and that was the Terminator, and he was a robot.
Paul, he reminds me of Bats.
Oh, who is Bats?
Just another jerk with no sense of humor.
Yes, Mortal Kombat quotes in case anyone's wondering. So let's talk now about the most recent game, Metroid Dread. Everyone was praising that game. I have not played it, so I can't say one way or the other on it. But everyone was praising that game as like a return to form. So why were people saying it was a return to form? Like, how far did it stray from
The
how far did it stray to get that?
the thing is, it didn't stray. Dread was basically the revival of a series that was dead. It was the first Metroid game for like a decade, if not more.
Because Other M was the most recent one
But
before that, right?
yeah, and I'm pretty sure Metroid Dread was the first Metroid game for the better part of 10 to 15 years. Chris would probably know this better than me.
Yeah, Other M came out in 2010. Federation Force and Samus Returns were on the 3DS,
And
2016 and 2017, and Dread in 21, like we said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
and Dread introduced potentially the scariest enemies of them all, the Emmy.
Oh wow. That looks like something you'd find in Portal.
Seriously, yeah, but trust me when I tell you, this thing is terrifying. When you have this thing chasing you with like very ominous sounds playing, oh my gosh, it is a heart attack and a half.
How bad is it on a scale of 1 to the Guardians from Breath of the Wild?
Honestly, I would rather be chased by those.
Really?
Yes.
Because I remember the
And
first time the Guardians chased me, and that was terrifying.
I would rather be chased by those. Also, this is Samus in Dread. They gave her look a complete overhaul, and I dig it.
So I also heard something else kind of interesting about Dread in that it weirdly is outside of the normal canon. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
I mean, it's at the very end of the timeline, but it's not outside the whole storyline.
I mean, here the main differences are Metroids are not present, and the villain is not Ridley.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, because we skipped over this character, one we didn't talk about. Meet Dark Samus.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about her. Okay, so what is Dark Samus's story?
So Chris, did you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
I can take this one. I'll try to sum it up as quickly as I can. But Paul, let me test your knowledge a bit. Do you know what phazon is?
Phazon, no.
All right, so phazon is this blue radioactive substance that can result in either death or complete genetic mutation of
Okay.
of a living organism. The whole Prime trilogy, Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3, primarily center their stories around phazon and the dangers that it presents. So phazon is originates on a planet called Phase, which like every 100 years they unleash these things called Leviathans, which are basically living meteors that fly in space until they land on a planet and basically corrupt it with phazon. And then inside Leviathans are these creatures that act to protect its heart, guardians of sorts. So a single Metroid like hitched a ride on the Leviathan that landed on Talon 4 in the original game and transformed into the eponymous creature Metroid Prime. So
Okay.
Samus goes to destroy Metroid Prime and she kicks its ass, but then as it dies, Metroid Prime like latches onto her trying to take her down with it in the ensuing phazon explosion, but Metroid Prime survives and ends up absorbing Samus's DNA partially and remutates itself into Dark Samus.
And I believe it also used her suit that she lost as a base for the body.
Yes, the phazon suit.
Yes.
So underneath all of that, Dark Samus is basically nothing but a bunch of
I mean,
goo, right?
well, the thing is, if you use the X-ray visor, you can see she does indeed have a skeleton.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of Prime 2, you get like a good look of what she looks like beneath the armor, and she doesn't look like anything resembling a human.
I'm pulling up an image of this now, by the way.
I've actually never seen this because I played about half of Prime 2 and then quit because it got super confusing. Now, bear in mind, this is like 6-ish years ago. So once Prime 2 eventually comes to the Switch, hurry it up, Nintendo. I'm getting tired of waiting.
That's the best I could find.
You'll probably want Dark Samus Prime 2 Final Fight to get a better image.
Okay.
But anyway, once Metroid Prime 2 eventually comes to Switch, again, Nintendo, hurry up. I'm getting tired of waiting. Then hopefully I'll be able to go through it again, not get confused, and actually have the patience to do it.
All right, let's see about this picture here. Whoops. Hold on. Let's try this again. This picture.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
That is horrendous.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is wow.
She looks awesome for a villain, but it's still horrendous.
Absolutely. Like it almost I could see a little bit. It reminds me of General Grievous in the sense that it's an exosuit with all the exposed organs underneath. Or at least that's what it looks like to me.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Just no forearms and no debilitating cough.
Yeah, the head of
I feel like I just got singled out for the debilitating cough.
You didn't, dude. It's fine.
Oh no, I'm only joking. I'm just yanking your chain. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, and of course, and Dark Samus's whole thing is that she consumes and is powered by phazon. Like that's that blue energy that powers that you see from her abilities in Smash.
Right.
So you fight her. So you fight her in the Dark Samus form in Prime 2 and Prime 3 as the final boss of both games.
Okay. So is that it for her then, or does she come back in later games?
She's only been in the Prime games. And she's in Smash now.
Yes.
But other than that, she's never made another appearance, and there's pretty much no way she can appear again because at the end of 3, she's dead for good. I don't feasibly see how they could bring her back.
Okay. By the way, Trevor, while you were saying all of that, your picture froze. And you just went dark.
Yeah, he went dark for me too.
Trevor, are you there?
If he's talking, I can't hear him. All right, Trevor's back, but
I think his internet is giving up again.
Yeah.
I'll message him real quick. Let's see.
Yeah, I see. You just noticed. That was just me. You messaged Paul.
I gotcha. Oh, whoops, sorry. I thought it
Yeah,
was our DM.
yeah, Trevor, you there? Like that was.
Sorry
There we
about
go.
that. So let's see. Is there anything we haven't talked about with Metroid? Anything we missed?
I don't think we fully went through the list of the timeline.
Okay, so how does the timeline break down then? Is it every single game happens one after another, or do you jump around?
Well, in terms of release, the release order is different from the chronological story order. I mean, so each game has like their own stories, but there are some like overarching connections. Like the Prime trilogy has an overarching connection through Phazon, even
Okay.
though even though each game's story is different. So starting off the timeline is of course the original game, and you can also swap it out for its remake, Zero Mission for the Game Boy Advance, because that added more onto the original story.
Okay, real quick, I got a message from Trevor. He is not going to be back. I'll respect his privacy and say why, but he does say thanks for watching and thanks for having it. Absolutely, Trevor. If you're still able to hear this, thank you for coming on. We will definitely have you back for another beginner series. I don't know what it'll be yet, but we'll definitely have you back.
Thanks for joining us, Trevor. If you watch this later on.
So, okay, so getting back into the timeline. So, what happens? What game happens first?
First is the original game, and you can also, and in the same spot, you can also substitute the Zero Mission remake on the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
And then after that, after the first game is the first Metroid Prime game.
Mm-hmm.
Following that is Metroid Prime Hunters, which was a spin-off for the DS. Then you've got 2 and 3, Prime 2 and Prime 3. Following Prime 3, you've got Federation Force, which is even though that one didn't really take off as well, that's like the one Metroid game where instead of actually playing as Samus, you actually play as these elite troopers of the Galactic Federation who are kind of the good guy faction in the universe.
Right.
So you play as like a couple elite troopers from their military, because Samus gets captured by the space pirates in that game, and you've got to essentially rescue her with these elite troops. After that is Metroid 2 Return of Samus, and of course its 3DS remake, Samus Returns. And that one, the Samus Returns remake, connected it more towards Super Metroid, to explain why Ridley kidnaps the baby Metroid at the beginning of Super Metroid, which of course comes up next to the timeline.
Okay.
After Super Metroid is Other M. Following Other M is Fusion, and then capping off the timeline is Metroid Dread.
Metroid Dread. Okay. We didn't really talk about Fusion, so what's that one's story?
All right, so in that one released for the Game Boy Advance, Samus goes on a exploration mission with a couple Federation soldiers on planet SR388, the original homeworld of the Metroids.
Mm-hmm.
And they go there after Samus had exterminated the Metroids, for a simple routine exploration mission, and so they get ambushed by one of the native animals, which sounds par for the course. So Samus shoots the creature, but then after killing it, it reveals a creature that Trevor alluded to, the X-Parasite, which are these gelatinous organisms that can infect and absorb the memories and mimic the physical appearance of anything they kill. So Samus gets infected, so Samus gets infected by one, and as she's leaving SR388, the infection ends up taking over, and she crashes her ship into an asteroid belt. The Federation recover her, and then they end up curing her of the X parasite infection by using the DNA of the last baby Metroid. They develop a vaccine which not only cures the X infection but renders Samus immune to it going forward. Um,
Okay.
because in Fusion, the way you heal is by killing the X mimic enemies and absorbing the X parasites into yourself to replenish your health and ammo and such.
Right.
And then the main
So
good.
no, you finish up and then I'll ask my question.
All right, so then the main threat in that game is so the way that Samus explains the surgery in her monologues is that they had to surgically remove parts of her suit to like inject the Metroid vaccine, but then those infected suit parts still have some X parasites on them, and it forms into a doppelganger of Samus called the SAX, which Samus describes as her, but heartless. So it's every bit as skilled and powerful as she is, and something. So and because the vaccine gave her Metroid DNA, Samus also inherited their weakness to cold-based weapons in cold environments.
So it sounds like this SAX entity is like another Dark Samus. Is that correct?
Kind of, yeah, but unlike Dark Samus, the SAX looks for the most part exactly like Samus
Okay.
because of the shapeshifting.
Gotcha. So my next question is there room for more stories after Dread, or did Dread just wrap it up?
Oh no, there's definitely room for more stories because the people who developed Metroid Prime Hunters, like they ended up well, in Hunters you meet a whole bunch of other bounty hunters that you like never really see beyond that game, save for one, but we can get to that guy in a second. Um, so that whole story like introduces like new species, new factions that could have be used going forward. And one of the one of the producers said that he wanted to like continue the story of a character introduced in Hunters, that being Silux. I'll let
Mm-hmm.
you pull up a picture of him.
How do I spell the name?
Sylux.
Okay. Let me do that real quick. Okay. Okay, I got a picture of him right here. Let me pull this up. He really looks like someone out of Tron.
Oh yeah, but yeah, that is indeed Silux. So the lore established in Prime Hunters for him is that he has this mysterious grudge against the Galactic Federation and Samus in particular for her association with them. Like
Mm-hmm.
that suit he wears is stolen experimental Federation tech from like an illegal weapons project that they were doing. And
Okay.
it's not really clear why he hates Samus and the Federation as much as he does, but seems like he hates them enough to want to bring them down. And because the overall plot in Prime Hunters is that Samus and Silux and the other hunters receive this mysterious telepathic message from in a being unknown to them in the game setting of the Tetra Galaxy about the so-called secret to ultimate power lying within that star system.
Okay.
And Samus and the other hunters each want to try and get that for different reasons. Thylex's being that he wants to destroy the Federation with it, with what it. But yeah, and unlike the rest of the characters from Hunters, he actually does make an appearance beyond that game. In the bonus ending for Metroid Prime 3, if you get like 100% of scans and pickups, you get a cutscene of Samus just like kind of reflecting on her adventure, sitting down on one of the planets you visit in the game. And as her ship leaves, you see another vessel following her from behind, which was later confirmed years after the game's release to be Psylux following her.
Yeah.
So we have yet to find out what actually came of that. But and he also makes a cameo in a bonus cutscene in Federation Force where he releases a baby Metroid from captivity for reasons unknown.
Interesting. So let's see. I'm trying to make sure I got everything asked here. All right. Just for fun. And we're going to wrap up the stream with this. Let's talk death battles for a second. Because I know that the official Death Battle channel wrote a battle between Boba Fett and Samus. Do you agree with that?
Yes, that was actually the very first episode they did back in the day.
Okay.
And then they did a remastered version later on to honor one of their animators who had passed away by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And you know who won both of those, right?
I believe Samus did, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you were so I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here, Chris. If you were to completely rewrite that fight, how would you do it? Just you don't have to go through the whole thing. Just in brief, if you rewrote that fight, how would you do it?
Well, it's been a while since I watched either version of the fight, so I don't. I mean, I think I vaguely remember how the first version ended, but I don't remember how the remaster, like what the killing blow was in that one. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. So that's hard for me to say without having like recently watched them.
Okay. Well, anyways, guys, with that, we're going to go ahead and end the stream here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Chris, real quick, stick around a little bit after the stream's over because we do need to talk about something. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will talk to you guys later. And let me get my outro video. Where is it? Here we go.